Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwikta.
This is Merps, and we got another great podcast for you guys today. The sun is shining, summer is coming. Great time to hunker down, stay indoors, and play Arena.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice I'm in my new apartment. It's new. It's smaller.
Wow.
It's less expensive, but it's still nice.
It's fiscally
It's
responsible.
fiscally responsible. It's also brand new, which is really nice. It reminds me of when Hearthstone was a brand new game and how much there was to discover, and how even though some things were broken or not the best, you are okay with it because it was new.
Yep. So, look, we have some new things like Atticus' new apartment, his new, almost kind of like outlook on life. It's like you're clean now.
God,
Not in like a
you make
drug.
it sound like I was on
Yeah,
heroin or
not like a
something.
drug sense. Atticus is not. He's not like not like that. I mean,
I'm
like
clean
physically.
now for
He's
4 days.
yeah. He showered. He showered. There you go. He's also eating healthier. This is good. This is good. And the biggest news of all, Adulta is going for the leaderboards this month.
I am. In June, I started it off with a 12-win run, and I promptly started playing on the weekend, and I got 3 runs that were like all below 7 wins.
Yes, indeed. Well, oh man, I was like, how long can I go without coughing? It was only a
1
minute
minute.
and a half. It's all right. I mean, I do sound a lot better than I did all of last week. Right?
Yeah,
So,
you did.
anyways, yeah, dude, that was just because on Friday your 12-win run. Although you did the last part without me, it was because my energy
I did,
stayed.
and I did
know?
listen to you for like most of the draft.
You did. You did. Yeah.
So that was gone. No, but I have a issue, and this is something people actually ask a lot. So I want to talk about it, like just a little bit to give you. I've been saying this forever, by the way, for like 2 years. There's something about the weekend, and like I averaged like 8.5 wins in my February run when I was going for the leaderboard, except on the weekends. And on the weekends, I averaged like 6 wins. And of course, I played most of my games not on the weekend because of that, but I still had to play during the weekend. So this time, I'm going to try to like just not play on the weekend at all. Friday nights are okay-ish, but it really starts like Saturday, and it's especially during the daytime. The nights are like less bad than the daytime, and I don't know. I call it the weekend meta because that's when I would play, but it could just be the daytime meta period, right? Because I never play during the day because I'm working. But something about it makes it totally different than the nighttime meta. Like, I feel like opponents have weirder swings. I'm less able to predict what my opponents are likely to do. Like, it's not necessarily that they're better opponents, but I think they all have better decks for some reason. And of course, this could just be a giant conspiracy theory, but I've been tracking my stats for literally 2 years now. Like, it has been
Okay.
2 years since I started tracking my stats. And you see a clear divide between games played on weekend and games played not on the weekend. Like, of more than 1 win per run. Over the course of
So
2 years. Like, pretty steadily.
so let me ask you a question. What is it? Like, what is it about the weekend? Like in your theories slash conspiracy theory.
So my theory is that gameplay traffic is highest among bad and casual arena players on the weekend. Either because they have a lot of
Ah.
time and so they get bored of constructing and they're like, I'm gonna do an arena run, or they're just casual players generally and so they just like play a run on the weekend. Also, a lot of people like to play arena like maybe in one sitting or like 2 sittings. Whereas for constructed, you can just log in and play a game. So if you just have like a little bit of time here and there, you can play during like the weeknight or whatever. But you may not want the commitment of an arena run if you do it on the weeknight. So the more casual players may play more during the weekend and the daytime. So that's my theory. And as always, the more bad players you have, the meta in theory gets easier. Especially if you're like a good player. But if you are like a top player and you can beat good players anyway, then you just want more good players because then you're more predictable. And when you get
Sure,
a lot
sure.
of and when you get a lot of bad players in, they're gonna have better decks, right? When you get to the top, like when you get to like 5, 6, 7 wins, those decks are gonna be better than if it was a meta of a whole bunch of good players, because the good players would have worse decks, and it'd be able to pull it up there. So it's this like kind of like ladder thing, right? Like if you can beat everybody in the 90 percentile, like they have to be top 10 percentile to have like a good shot of beating you outside of ridiculous RNG, then you don't really care too much if the players you face are from like the bottom half or like the 50 to 10 percentile range, right? Like they're the same to you. You can predict their movements as long as you give them the same kind of deck. It doesn't matter too much. On the other hand, if you give the worst players better decks with either more RNG or more combos that they could potentially hit, or just more swings, you have a higher chance of losing. So that's my theory, completely unbacked up by anything besides my personal experience over the last 2 years.
Okay, I think that's fair. Like, I don't know what more I can say about it. Obviously,
you're not buying into the conspiracy theory?
I don't know. Well, first of all, it's been so long since I played since the weekend, right? I just don't play. It's the weekend. It's crazy, but sometimes I prefer to do something outside of Hearthstone.
Dude, that's so weird. You play Hearthstone all week, and on the weekend, you don't want to play Hearthstone more?
I don't want to play Hearthstone. I might want to play another game or not game at all, and
that's just not a thing. I don't understand.
Do something else. Yeah, it's crazy. So I can't really give my input. Look, on some sense, sure, it does make sense, right? But I'm sure there's a lot of other factors, or you could just be crazy.
Statistically crazy. Statistically backed up by crazy. I'm reading Twitch chat right now. Someone said before, maybe Aggro is just not a morning person, which is true. I'm not a morning person, but I usually play Hearthstone while drinking coffee, and I am well rested generally, and I'm usually not well rested when I play on weeknights. So I should be better.
You should be, but right, we're not introducing a lot of factors. Anyways, this is Advocate's theory. We'll leave it as it is. That's not the topic of today.
Yeah, there's no way to prove it or anything. I just have a whole lot of stats backing this up, and the only difference is me, as a physiological human being, I may be playing worse, or it's the meta, and I think it's the meta, and it's not me. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Let's talk about something you may care more about, which is our deep fried meta of today. This is going to be the focus of the whole thing. We technically have a deep fried meta and a card good bad and a class talk on Hunter, and the card good bad is Jeweled Macaw. I'm just going to introduce it right now. But in reality, we're just going to make a free-flowing discussion for this Lightforge about one thing that you generally don't want to do in the Un'Goro meta, but we're going to tell you how to do it if you have to. If your draft goes that way or if you're playing Hunter, which is to go aggro. How do you go aggressive in Un'Goro? How do you win as Hunter? We consistently put Hunter as one of the top classes, right? We have it as the number 3 class right now. We even have it above Paladin. We may change that because Hunter's always better in the beginning of the meta than the middle / end of the meta.
Yeah, I think that's just wrong now.
Yeah,
I think that's
right. I wouldn't put Hunter that high. I would put Paladin up and move Hunter down. But still, it's one of our top 4 classes, right? We don't think Shaman is better than Hunter. We don't think Priest is better than Hunter. If you listen to the last Lightforge, Ratsma had Priest really high. A lot of people have Shaman higher than we do. But we put Hunter on, I think it's a clear number 4 right now in my book. And let's just talk about how to Hunter. I'm about to go into this leaderboard thing, and I think I know how to play a lot of the classes on Un'Goro well, but I do not have as much experience in the Un'Goro meta as you do, and you also play a crap ton of Hunter, compared to most people.
Well, so I play a lot relative to what I do play. If you look at the other streamers, they all play more than us.
Oh, yeah,
right? Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a pretty relevant topic as well, because every time I play something like Hunter, I see half the chat is like, oh man, Hunter is so good, right? It just punishes the greedy decks. And other people are just like, oh man, Hunter is so bad in this meta now, because people realize and they draft Tar Creepers extremely high. Mages have the Flame Geysers, and they have the spells to sort of counteract you, right? And also at the end, it's like, oh man, I'm almost there, and then they drop a Primordial Drake, and you're just like, oh, I guess that's it. And both statements are kind of true. Hunters can be quite powerful, but they've gotten quite a few good tools in this expansion. Crackling Razor Maul is the best example, right? But at the same time, other classes have all of these great taunts. Something like Stonehill Defender is really annoying. It's 4 HP.
I hate Stonehill Defender when I'm Hunter.
Right. You see a Stonehill Defender, And that thing is going to soak up so much damage, delay the game, and you just know they have another taunt. And there's a bonus to something like a Primordial Drake, right? So really, really annoying. So aggro, I think, is in a good spot, but you have to play it just a little bit differently than how it was at the very, very beginning of the meta. And I guess I'll explain how I played Hunter at the very beginning, or how I preferred to play Hunter at the very beginning, and how I've shifted a little bit. So at the beginning of the Un'Goro meta, I think you could do traditional sort of like, foot on the gas pedal aggro, right? Which means, you draft all your ones, you draft twos, you draft removals, and you can go super fast. Your curve just like spikes and peaks at like the 2-drop, right? With like a lot of ones, and you have some 3s and you have some 4s, maybe 1 or 2 5s, and then you just like go all in aggro.
Balls to the wall, hit the face and smork.
Yeah. And that worked really well, because anytime people are not used to it, right? People are not like comfortable with the meta. They're still trying to adjust. You beat any sort of control deck, because with an unrefined control deck is so vulnerable to super aggro, right? Because they still don't really know what to draft, and they're still trying to play around it. And if you're facing another aggro deck, the faster aggro deck wins, right?
Yep.
So that style was really good. Now that people have experience, and also, sort of the new players have disappeared, right? So
or become better
because of the Lightforge podcast and the Lightforge tier list.
Please recommend to a new friend the Lightforge podcast.
So because of that change, and I've seen that change, right? I've seen it in person while playing Hunter. I've shifted my playstyle just a tiny bit. And look, if I can still draft the balls to the wall, as you call it, aggro, I still will, because it's fun. But I do recognize that it's a little bit worse, and it's just a little bit worse, and you don't get there as often. The games in which you sort of barely win, now you barely lose, right?
Yep.
And with Hunter, that's like 30% of your games.
Yep.
The ones where you're like just really edging it really close.
That's why Hunter is always like one of the most skilled classes, and it feels weird to say when just hitting face doesn't seem very skilled, but because Arena, the whole band of different decks was so close, like there's a little more variation now, but it's still generally so close that knowing when to deal that damage and when to preserve the board to be able to deal more damage the next turn, and when to just swing everything to the face, that literally wins and loses games. And there's not a lot of classes in which the 1 or 2 decisions you make have that kind of impact.
Right. So I've shifted a little bit. Now, I still prefer playing aggro Hunter, because, and by quote aggro, I need different terms for these. Because when I say aggro, like sometimes it means just a little bit more, a little bit bigger picture, a little bit.
Okay, you can call it the X drop Hunter, meaning that is the highest drop you will take. Sure. So the balls to the wall Hunter is the 5-drop Hunter, meaning you will only take a couple of cards that are 5-drop or more, and you're probably not going to take 6 drops or 7 drops.
Why are we calling it the 5-drop Hunter then? Shouldn't it be like the 2-drop Hunter?
No, it's all because every Hunter is the 2-drop Hunter. But the 5-drop Hunter is the limit. It's the limit of the drop that you will actually start.
Okay. All right. I don't want to use those terms, but I will be more specific. I would say, in general, you still want to be aggressive as Hunter, no matter what, right? You still want that face damage. You do not want to play at the speed of a mage or of a priest, right? That is something that you never want to do. However, because of people's adaptations, people's adaptations to the Un'Goro meta, what you want to do now is shift the curve a little bit, but you don't want to just shift the curve from like a peak of, let's say, like 2s and 3 drops to now like 3s and 4 drops. What you want to focus on is drafting a lot of those cards for a tempo swing at any given point. So do you still want 1 drops and 2 drops and 3 drops in the what I would call the quote new Hunter? Yes. and especially like good 1-drops and 2-drops, right? You still want those. You still want as many as possible. But you are mostly looking for cards that get you a tempo swing at any given moment in the game.
So what does that mean?
Deadly Shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hunter's Mark. It can even be a minion, an overstated minion like Bitter Tide Hydra, right? That is, I'll even include that in the quote tempo swing. Mostly it's just it's like a overcosted tempo turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. You want to look for cards like that because the old style of Hunter, in which I would call that sort of the snowball Hunter, right? You just like get out there, you sort of snowball off of your early lead. There are still remnants of that in what I would call the new Hunter. So you still want the 1s and the 2s, and you still want the opportunity to snowball, especially because there are some cards out there, Crackling Razor Maul and Vicious Fledgling. They're the two big ones that allow you to snowball, right? That incentivize you to get on the board early. But you can't rely on that sort of balls to the wall. I'm going to drop all of this, and it's like, I'm all in. You just push all of your chips in.
Okay.
You want to have the big stuff, the Bitter Tide Hydras, even sometimes like older fist.
How much mana do you go? Is it the 6-drop Hunter now, or is it the 7-drop Hunter?
It's 6-7-drop Hunter.
Oh, it's a 7-drop
right?
Hunter now.
Yeah. It can. You definitely want to prioritize those. Spellbreakers are amazing, right?
Is it an 8-drop Hunter? What do you do with it? Do you take Charged Devil Swords?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the card quality, right? But you know how before, at the very beginning of the meta, if I see a Bog Creeper, I'm like, I do not want this at all, right? Like, no, I just don't want this. Yeah, I would take a Bog Creeper. I would take, a Charged Devil Sword as well. That's fine. And here's the important part about those mid/late game tempo swings. Because of the way that the game is right now, like, and if you're building a board, they're building a board, I find that in those mid-tempo swings, you can get just enough damage off of one swing to get them close to lethal, right? And that's important. So even if you don't deal like any damage or only some damage in the early turns, like, you're on turn 7 and they're at like 25, 24 HP, right? But you have a good board, and then you're always looking for that like Hunter's Mark turn. You're looking for that Deadly Shot turn. You get that off, you get like the 15 damage to the face, and the game is pretty much over, right?
Yep.
So you're looking for that. So you still keep the snowball potential in the quote old Hunter, but in the new Hunter, you also have this other out because you keep on drafting these cards that at any point of the game, you're just like, okay, I can swing it at any point, and then I just need to connect that 15 to the face, and the game is over.
Because they're at 25, you connect 15, they're at 10, and now you just have to not die for a little bit.
You just have to not die, exactly. So I found this to be more effective, and it severely increases the chances of you winning, because there's a decent percent of time, you get the 1-drop, 2-drop, you get the fledgling out, and you win like that, right? But then, there will be those times in which you play that, and then the mage just like, ping, flame geyser, frostbolt, and then you have to find a way, right? That's when you need the Bitter Tide Hydras, which you would draft anyways. But the Bitter Tide Hydras, and then the Volcanosaurs, the big stuff that also you put out there, and then after that you Deadly Shot, you Hunter's Mark.
Okay, so let's say this is constructed, but you're not allowed to pick which cards you get. You're just allowed to pick categories of cards. You have 30 cards. What's the distribution? Perfect deck, perfect Hunter deck. How many 1-drops?
How many 1-drops? I still want about 3 to 4 1-drops.
3 to 4 1-drops.
Right, with 2 of them being like Jeweled Macaws.
Yeah, we'll get into Jeweled Macaws after this. How many 2-drops?
I still want like 5 to 6, and as many Crackling Razor Mauls as like possible, right? Like those things are broken. Do you
take 2 3s?
Yes, I definitely take 3s.
No, do you take 2 3s instead of 3 2s?
Oh,
like not 2 3s over 3 2s, but do you think 2 3s are almost as good as 3 2s in Hunter?
yes, I still take those just because of jeweled Macaws, right? I still take those because of jeweled Macaws and because I'm taking Raptor Patriarchs as well. I don't want their 2/3s to farm my early game.
Right.
So
Okay.
because you have early game, 2/3s on your side are absolutely fine.
Perfect. Yep. I totally agree. If you have a 1-drop, 2/3s get much better.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What about 2/2s?
2/2s, I really don't like it.
Like
I still
what
pick
about
some-
applesauce? How high would you take
Applesauce?
an
I think it's not
applesauce?
good.
Okay.
All right, so for
So
those
that's
of you
the
who don't know,
line.
applesauce is the gadgets and social life.
He says applesauce. I think everyone knows Gadgets and Socialite is
Isn't it a
applesauce.
she, not a he? Come on.
Sure. I don't see gender.
Oh, right, right. Well, anyways, 2/2s, I think, and it's not universal, right? If you get like a pint-sized summoner, I think that's pretty good. Scavenging Hyena, I think, is amazing in this meta. Like, Scavenging Hyena is actually a very, very good card. It's quite rare for it to stay as a 2/2.
Right.
And some games,
Some
it's
games
just
you win,
ridiculous.
other games it comes out not on turn 2, but as a 4/3 for 2 mana.
Right, which is great.
That needs to be removed immediately.
Yeah. So you want like 3 to 4 1-drops, right? I would still take like 5 to 6 2-drops. Maybe even a little bit more. Well, we're assuming 2 drops, right? Like not 2 mana cards, like
Yeah.
5 to 6 extra 2
Yeah,
drops.
so if you're not
Okay,
counting
yeah,
2/2s, then anything besides 2/2s.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's good. And 3s.
So you are now at, I'm going to average out so 3.5 and 5.5. That's 9. You have 9 cards in there invested in your early curve.
Yep.
How many 3s? This is the ideal curve.
Right. 3 to 4 is fine. I don't need
You don't
that
need
many.
4? You don't need 4 3-drops?
Like closer to 4 probably.
Okay.
But because
Well,
you have the ones as
right.
well.
No,
like,
that's true.
Yeah. Because like you have 4 1-drops. I still think it's so important for you to have those ones. And jeweled Macaws are so good as well because you know
Yep.
you drop a 1/1 and then you still have a card, right?
Yep.
You still have a card in there.
All right, so we're at 13
Yep, we're at 13
for your 1
and
through
then-
3 drops.
And then for 4 drops, I don't need that many. Like
Ideal
now,
3, 2.
4.
That's
maybe.
a lot. That's what I have in a control deck.
I mean, like I think 4 is fine. I think 3
Okay.
is fine.
No,
as
4 is
well.
fine,
Yeah.
but that's not like I don't need a lot. That's like I want a normal number of 4 drops as if it were a
it's
part of
it's
my
like
curve.
a normal number. And then
Okay.
everything else is just sort of like quality.
Okay,
right?
so that's 17 cards through 1 through 4. You
Right.
have 13 more cards. What do you want them to be?
I want them to be good.
How many
quality
removals do you want?
total in the deck?
Yeah.
Total
Because
in the
drops are
deck-
not removals, right? Like if you have like a Wolf Rider, that's not a drop. We're gonna categorize that as a removal.
right.
Like anything
right.
with
I want-
initiative is a removal, right? Fire Plume questionable as a drop, but I'm gonna categorize it as a removal.
Right.
Like
I think like 7 to 8.
8 removals. Okay.
Yeah.
So 8
So
removals.
this is between like the deadly shots, the hunter's marks, the
Yeah. Like
stuff.
yeah, Fire Plume Phoenix, Charge
Fire
Devil
Plume.
Soar, like anything
Yep,
like
yep.
that. So normally in a control deck, you want more than 10 cards with initiative, right? You definitely want more than 10 cards with initiative. If you have less than 10 cards with initiative, you're a control deck. Better have a whole crap ton of taunts. So here you only need 8. You need less initiative than what you would normally need, which is just as well because in Hunter you don't have as many cards with initiative as
you
let's
don't.
say in a Mage. But that is okay. So 8 cards with initiative, so not part of your curve. You're now at 25. And so you have 5 cards that are like non-drop utility, like card draws, maybe a couple big cards that you were talking about, and that's like 5.
This is where I want the big cards because like the utility cards, I don't find utility cards like super great, right? It's like if I'm drawing a card,
You don't want an Outfitter? Or whatever it is, I may be getting it wrong, the Grimestry guy?
informant.
Yeah, Informant. You don't want to be informed?
Yeah, no. Like an informant is fine, right? But these are the times in which I'm okay / happy picking like a Volcanosaur, right? Call of the Wild, obviously, you know, if you get one, you're still quite happy with it because it's an amazing card. Like this is where you want to fill in with like good cards, even something like Sated Threshodon, right? Just something really annoying for your opponents.
Okay.
I think that's fine. So like at this point, it's and we put like four drops. You can take one of those and put it into another Volcanosaur, right? But sort of this is where the main difference will be versus the old Hunter, in which it's all sort of 4 to 5 of these big cards. They're going like earlier, right? I'm just like more 2-drops, more 3s, more 1s especially.
Cool.
So that's kind of it. That's sort of the quote perfect Hunter if I were to pick it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really helpful to like give people like a very concrete sense of what you want in a deck, because when we come and in terms of playing, the waiting for the turn to like hit everything to the face, right? Play the board, then hit everything to the face and finish it off. That's generally the play style of Hunter, and I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Hunter. Let's talk specifically about Jeweled Macaw, right? We talked about it some. There's also Crackling Razor Maul, but I don't really care too much about it because it's pretty obvious. It's just like good, and you play it whenever. But Jeweled Macaw is interesting in a draft, right? Because we have it rated 138, which is insanely high, right? That is a really, 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 really high score. It's higher than a Vicious Fledgling. It's higher than a Mad Bomber. It's higher than a Dark Iron Dwarf. It's higher than a Cult Master. It's almost as high as a Primordial Drake, right? It's higher than a lot of these like really insanely good cards that people auto-pick. And at a certain point, you may really hesitate to take that Jeweled Macaw over these like really insanely good cards. So the question is, what is your draft state like that you will actually listen to the tier list and take this Jeweled Macaw as high as we rate it?
I mean, okay, so I won't compare it to like the rares or epics or whatever, right? Because that would never come up. But yeah, I mean, that's basically where I take Jeweled Macaw. Jeweled Macaw, I think, is incredible. And so something about our tier list that right now I'm like, so right now, Jeweled Macaw is a little bit lower than Giant Wasp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Hunter, I don't think Giant Wasp should be that high. Like people have, I can't really describe it, but Giant Wasp isn't getting the value that I want it to get, or I need it to get, right? And especially for Hunter,
you can't hit the face with it and
Yeah,
still
you
get good value the next turn.
right? And so, like, would I take a Jeweled Macaw over a Giant Wasp? I mean, it sort of depends on where my draft is going, right? If it has no removals, then like, well, I just need the Wasp for removal. But yeah, like that's basically where I would pick it at 138, above like all of the other stuff.
Better than a Tar Creeper, better than a Cult Master. Okay, so what's so good about Jeweled Macaw? So my whole thing of picking Jeweled Macaw is I take it if I need ones. I don't take it if I don't need ones. Like, if I already have 4 1-drops, I don't take a Jeweled Macaw this high anymore. But you're not expected to be able to get, like, 4 1-drops, even with Hunter. So,
right, 4 1-drops, you're lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky. So generally, Jeweled Macaw fills in that. Like, you're saying, like, oh, I want 3.5 1-drops. Well, in a normal draft, you have to reach down somewhat for it. Like, you have to start taking, like, fiery bats. You have to start taking Raptor Hatchlings, like you said, right? Raptor Hatchling, by the way, should probably also be on here for a card good bad, because some people rate it super high. But it's 82 on our tier list, because it generally doesn't do much, and you are not drawing that many cards. You're going to draw, what, like, as a hunter, maybe a total of, like, 15 cards, 20 at most, before you've lost or won the game.
And by that time, your 2 mana advantage is, like...
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And by that time, you're still drawing a small card. Like, by that time, you actually do want to draw, like, a mid-sized to big card. So,
right.
You actually
or a card
have
that
to,
can flip.
Yeah.
Right.
So you actually don't want to get in top deck mode and draw this. So your last, like, 5 cards as a 100 Raptor Hatchling is a bad card, actually. But in that mid area, it's a really good card to draw, right? Like, if you play it and you immediately draw it, or you draw it in the next 5 turns, it's good, because it really helps that mid-game flip that Merps was talking about before. So it's a really weird... The ability for Raptor Hatchling is really weird. So if you guys don't know, Raptor Hatchling is a 1-mana 2/1 beast, Death Rattle Shuffle, a 4/3 Raptor into your deck. The 4/3 Raptor costs 1 mana too. So it's a good tempo swing, but it's not a terribly big card that you want in your deck. Although as a hunter, it's probably like closer to middle than it would be in other decks. Still, it's one of those cards that in a constructed deck, it's really good. In a deck that runs a whole bunch of, what is that, like 5 mana card that draws you stuff, which is also not that good. We rated Tovir Warden, which we rated 87, which is also not that good because there's so many times you can't even draw 2 1-cost minions from your deck.
I will say, during my last 12-win run, I had 2 of those things.
How many 1-drops did you have?
I had like 3, and then
What?
one of them was a Patriarch, the Raptor Patriarch thing.
Okay, but still, that's like 3.5, not even 3.5.
Yeah,
So
I'm not saying
how did the Tovirs even work?
I'm not saying it was good, and would I have preferred other 5-drops? Like, yeah, but there were games in which they were a net positive.
Okay.
Like a significant net positive. Still, I'm not saying they're great, but I turned around a little bit because I hated that card before. You know,
It's such a bad card. It's a 5 mana 3/5, and you draw. It's not like you summon your 1-drop minions. You draw them. You still have to pay 1 mana to play them.
The lesson I got during that run was less so about how good Tovir Warden is, but more so about how this mid-game shift works, right? Because a Tovir Warden, like, what it does is it draws you cards and it just thins out your deck, right? It takes like the worst draws away, which is good. Like, you want to draw more cards and you want to just sort of make sure your actual next draw is pretty good. And then drawing those ones, I was like, oh, like putting out 1 drop, just filling out the mana is pretty good, right? Because as Hunter, 1 damage always matters.
Right.
1 damage always matters. 1 tempo always matters. And then getting that stuff out there is just quite good, which ties in to why the Jeweled Macaw is so good. It's just, the effect is so small. And it's sort of like, when Web Spinner came out, people were just like, God, it's just a 1 mana 1/1. This thing sucks, right?
Oh, Web Spinner was so good, and then they upgraded it. This is Jeweled
And
Macaw.
then they upgraded to the Jeweled Macaw, right? It's the same thing. Like, it's people are very easy to give credit to things that they can see, to things that they can easily contribute, right? Which is why people go bonkers about Vicious Fledgling, right? Which, look, it's a very good card. Vicious Fledgling is a very good card. I don't want people getting angry at me.
I'm still annoyed at people on the whole Vicious Fledgling train.
But so Vicious Fledgling is something that it's very easy to see. And God, it's so rage-inducing. You're like, oh, I lost it. 7/7 Wind Fury
it's
cannot be
just a
targeted.
swing
Death
card.
Rattle.
It's like MCT back when people were like, oh, MCT was an auto pick. No, it was never an auto pick. I remember our first tier list. We had MCT like above average, and people were like, what? This is one of the best cards in the game. I lose to it all the time. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean it's good. That means you're a good player, and your opponents do it.
You're right. Anyways, look, Vicious Fledgling is a good card, but I think it plays into this thing where, you know, Jeweled Macaw is not flashy, but it just adds like these important stats at important times, and like, you know, you don't hang that mana, you present another problem for your opponent, and then, you know, you get, and it's like a free card, right? You just put it out there, you grab something.
And like you said, with Hunter, having a free thing on the board that someone has to hit, and if they don't hit it, or if they can't hit it because you have 4 things on the board and they have 2, then you get face damage.
It's so good because with Hunter, the math always works out. Like, you are always willing to trade 2 of your face damage for 1 of theirs, or sometimes 3 of your face damage or 4 of your face damage for 1 of theirs. And that's how you win a lot of times. And Jeweled Macaw helps you out with that. At the very least, like, you know, it buys you time, or, you know, lets you snowball. So I just think it's so great for that. And whatever you end up getting, if it's a small beast, fine. If it's, and sometimes you just get like a King Crush, or you can get King Mosh or something, like something really big. So it is inconsistent, but I think it just helps so much with the Hunter game. That, so your question is like, when do you draft it in according to the tier list? I'm like, quite often.
Almost always. Okay, yeah, and if you have more 1-drops, like, I don't think it gets scary until you have like 7 1-drops that you're going too fast.
Right.
Like, if you have 7 1-drops, you're going too fast. Like, slow down. Those 1-drops better all be Jeweled Macaws, because they get your card advantage back.
Right. I will say, during the draft, for example, we have Deadly Shot rated under Jeweled Macaw, not by like a huge amount, but it is under. If it's like the middle of the draft and I see that I don't,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
need to
have any
fill your 8
rules.
cards with initiative, which again, because this is Hunter, is really hard to freaking get. So
Right.
in your like ideal deck for Hunter, it's quite easy to get 5 to 6 2 drops. It's not easy
Oh
to
yeah.
get 3 to 4 1 drops. It's very not easy to get 8 cards with initiative. And so
Right.
those are your like focus areas.
Yeah, and I want those to be good, right? I want like a hunter's mark. I want two deadly shots. I want
You want
one
two
like
deadly shots. Okay.
I know, right? I want like one
By the way,
explosive.
I'm
I want a
laughing
free.
because you average zero point 0.7 deadly shots offered per run.
I know, I know. Well, if we're talking about the quote perfect deck,
Right, but I just mean like
yeah,
in categories. You don't get to pick like actual constructed deck, or else then you want combos.
right. Well, yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to ground it in some sort of reality. But
okay.
yes, yes. And you can see these are all sort of what I'm talking about, right? Like the sort of tempo swing flip cards, like the Hunter's Mark,
Hmm.
and the Deadly Shots, the Freezing Trap. Like these are all things that you really, really want.
Yep.
So yeah, that's how I think Hunter should be played these days, and it is hard because if you still play aggressive, it's such a fine line, and I think this is why people struggle with Hunter. And look, at the end of the day, even if you implement this perfectly, and I'm not saying I do, like I'm sure, like maybe there's some like perfect line that you have to like walk. Even if you walk that line perfectly, I think like sometimes you're just gonna get blown out, right, or just totally
Yep.
walled off. Um, that's a
You
little
run
bit
the risk.
frustrating.
You run that risk whenever you play super aggro. Just like if you play super control, you run the risk that someone is more control than you, right? That's like the
Right.
worst when you run a value deck and you're like, oh crap, my opponent's gonna outcard me, and you're just like, well, that's game. I'm gonna try to throw things at the face very, very inefficiently.
Right.
Um,
And it is the worst feeling because as a control deck, you don't
yeah,
have
you
a
don't
lot
have
of times you don't
tools.
have the option to flip,
Yeah.
right? So you're a control deck and suddenly like they're a Malkazar deck with like a Kazakis, you're just like, oh.
Hmm.
That's kind of unfortunate
Yep.
here.
And as you go higher, you see more and more of those decks. And the good part about Hunter is that it's actually not like terrible. Like it's a pretty good class to pick if you want to go 12, right? It's like Priest. Like the variance is decent. The actually the floor is not that low, but the ceiling's really freaking high for Hunter. Because
It's
if you
very
have
high.
a good deck for the Hunter that works out, like if you get Merp's perfect deck, and you have a decent card quality, it's not like the best Hunter deck ever, but you're not going to face harder and harder opponents as you get higher. Like after 8 wins, all the opponents are kind of the same. They're going to just outvalue each other because it's the Ungoro meta. And you're going to have just as much chance against almost all of them as you did at your 8 win game. Whereas that's not
Right.
true if you play a control deck. If you play a control deck, you see more and more ridiculous decks as it goes higher.
So in my latest Hunter run, I think to get to my 11th win, I faced a mage that, and this was like the turn before she died, right?
Mm,
Because I was playing
because you were
aggressive,
killing her.
right? And then what I saw was, she had like the fireballs and spells, and she coined out Medivh,
Mm,
and then she followed it up with a Firelands Portal. I'm like, okay, so like that's the kind of deck that.
you lose if you play control against it.
Right. That's like the 1% control deck,
Yep.
right? It's like the Medivh into the Firelands portal into the who knows what, right?
Mm.
Maybe like triple Firelands portals. Um, if you're a control deck, like you automatically lose to that deck. But this deck gives you a chance. And unfortunately at the same time, it's like, man, it feels bad when the paladin just like
Yeah.
has the Tar Creeper, has the True
Because it
Silver, has the
happens.
Steed.
It happens, and your
Yeah.
opponent could be a totally crappy player, and you just give them the win
Yeah.
because they have the cards, and it's not difficult to like play those cards, on curve and do the normal stuff against a hunter. So yeah, like you run that risk as a hunter, and even running that risk, you know how much we hate RNG risk when it comes to matchups and like anything like that with a class. Even running that risk, hunters like risk reward like average is still really good. So it's you feel less safe than if you were to play like a rogue or a mage, obviously. But you're running the same type of risk, right? Because I know a lot of people think, oh, it's aggro, I just get shut down, it feels really bad. But think of all the control matchups, which you lose because your opponent has a better deck. With the hunter, you don't need a great deck to go 12. You just need a good one. With a control
Yep.
deck, you kind of need a great deck to go 12, or else you don't have that much of a chance. Right? Your odds start dropping really drastically. With Hunter, you're going for the RNG luck when it comes to matchups. With Control, you're going for the RNG luck when it comes to matchups too with your opponent's deck. And in the Ungoro meta, when there's so many ridiculous decks out there, it's not a bad bet to pick Hunter.
No, and I think Hunter is one of those classes that really, by learning, I think it forces you to really think about the game a little bit more.
In ways that you don't as other classes.
Yeah.
As much, but it'll help like almost any class you face except Priest. Okay, so Hunter, number 4 on our class tier list, and we'll update that early next week. Is that it for the Lightforge? Is this like the shortest Lightforge like in a year and a half? I know before we tried to keep it to 45 minutes, and then we just kind of gave up on it.
We gave up, and now we're only like 40 minutes in. I mean, some closing remarks sort of about playing Hunter generally, right? With Hunter, a lot of what you are trying to do, like you want to sort of establish early on sort of your game plan. And with Hunter, like the old Hunter before, it was always balls to the wall aggro, right? And now, like, you really have to assess sort of like how important is their stuff on the board versus going face. I think it's quite different just because the threats that other classes pose are now different, right? For example, Paladins keeping stuff on the board in the early turns.
It's fine.
It's fine.
For
it doesn't
a Hunter,
matter.
It's fine.
Right. For it's totally fine.
Once turn 6 comes out.
Right. But priests, that's dangerous. Like that's still a little bit dangerous, right? Like, and then especially, like I was about to say, there's always Potion of Madness. I still haven't found a good way to play around.
You can't.
There isn't.
You can't. If you're playing Hunter, you don't play around Potion of Madness.
Right. But then, so with Hunter, you always have to like plan very, very carefully. So if you're like going through the checklist, if you go to the part of the checklist that says, what am I doing next turn? Extend that. What am I doing next turn? What am I doing the turn after that? And if you want to, you can extend it even one more turn and just sort of, don't plan it out and say, this is exactly what I'm going to do 2 turns from now. But, just think about it because that's really what you need to do with Hunter. Like if you watch sort of any streamer play Hunter, the amount of games in which you win on that turn, and if you don't win, they swing for like 15 damage to your face and you lose. That's such a high percent with Hunter, and that's really how you have to play. And it really goes back to like, man, if you didn't hit face on turn 2, then you lose the game right there.
The number of Hunter games I've lost by like 1 or 2 damage, it really makes me sad.
Yeah. And it's still like even in the mid game when you're thinking about it, it's like, oh man, do I kill off that 2-1 or do I just go face with my 1-1? These are decisions that are literally life and death.
Yeah, literally game winning. Like for Hunter, you can always, sometimes you get blown out, but like generally on your losses, you can, more than other classes, you can go back and pinpoint that exact turn when if you had done something differently, you may have been able to win.
And these situations are almost never relevant for like Priest. Almost.
Yeah.
Like I would say close to never. Close to never. Yeah.
So Priest is the easier to play class. So we say as we suck with Priest. Okay. So let's end this on question from the GOAT. Question from the GOAT. What is it?
All right. Question from the GOAT is actually from our subreddit. It is by an individual with the tag name Chanield. I don't know. Chanield. Anyways, he or she asks, since both of you enjoy Overwatch so much, which Overwatch character would you want in Hearthstone, and what would its card ability or hero ability be?
Okay, this I'm gonna start. I'm a main tank main in Overwatch. If you guys don't know, so like we used to play a lot of Overwatch. I played more than Merps, and I started off as a Rhine main, and then I added Winston, and then when Orisa came out, I'm an Orisa main right now in what is it, season 5 right now? Yeah, it's season 5, and I have like a 70% win rate. Like literally on Overbuff, I'm the number 35 ranked Orisa. I have a 70% win rate in Diamond. I'm not back up to Masters yet, but I'll get there.
Number 35 in the world, still in Diamond.
Still in Diamond. That's how few people play Orisa. And I don't get it, because Orisa, after the change, is so good. I have, like, top 1 percentile damage blocked. You just got to know how to, like, play her or whatever. But anyway, I started my Overwatch career as a Ryan main, and Ryan still has a very special place in my heart. So, Reinhardt would be, because he's a very normal character, a 4-mana card. Because I think a 4-mana card is the most normal thing ever. So he's a 4-mana card. He is a I want to say 012 taunt, but that may be a little too OP. So maybe like a 08 taunt. Okay, so he's like a 4-mana 08 taunt, where when he gets enraged, he gets +4 attack. That would be my version of Reinhardt, the legendary card.
Okay. Cool. So I think something that's interesting would be to take sort of one of like the Overwatch characters and turn it into sort of a unique trait or a unique interaction in Hearthstone, right? I think something that's cool is Ana, right? Like Ana is it's like a healer sniper. So if you make something for example, Ana would be like a 4-mana 4/4, but on each turn you have a choice. Like you can attack your like all other characters, it can attack on the other side of the board, or you can spend its attack attacking your own minions. Like you can click on your own minions, and it would heal for the attack of Ana.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like, you would heal. Instead of attacking them to the face, you can attack like your weakened Boulder Fist Ogre, which is like 6/1 now, right?
Okay.
You can attack the Boulder Fist Ogre and make it like a 6/5.
And your Boulder Fist Ogre would not attack back.
No, it would not attack back. You just spend your turn of Ana healing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. That's actually really, really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a unique mechanic. Mm-hmm. And also because I don't know whether to make it attack or just have it like activate an ability or something. And I'm sure there's implications there, but I think that'd be interesting.
Cool. All right. Well, that's Question from the GOAT. Question from the GOAT is brought to you by our patrons. Our top patrons for June, 4P, Afro Ninja, Famous Wild Goat, Ingo, Talon, Ugbog, and Zaruvi. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for feeding the goat. Our patron is at patreon.com/grinninggoat. And that's how you support the Lightforge podcast and keep us going. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week with more about the Ungoro meta, and maybe talk about a different strategy, a non-aggro strategy of how to do well in the meta. All right, until next time, this is Adwicto.
This is Merps. See you guys.